Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So this is Tuesday, August 26th. So yesterday or the day before, I had this idea to talk about martial law and grooming and how you've been groomed and explain the grooming behaviors. This is kind of a little bit of an educational thing, and I forgot all about this morning. And I was making, there's a bunch of stuff to get to, like always, and so I was eager to get to that. And then halfway through, I realized mid sentence that I had to do this. I was going to do this introduction, and then I went to eat breakfast, and lo and behold, Trump has signed an executive order expanding his martial law agenda here. But this has been a long time coming. I've had a folder called martial law for about 10 years, and this was, inevitable. Whatever theories are out there in the truth community about, the changes, New World Order, any of these things, you don't get there without martial law, because there's going to be things that people don't like, and you need to have control over the population. To do that, you have to have military on the streets. But anyways, let me show you this clip, and then I'll explain the grooming aspect of this.
He has mentioned, potentially wanting to do something similar with Los Angeles, with New York, with Oakland. I mean, tons of cities that he believes are what he calls a disaster due to crime. I'd also note that, of course, the cities I've mentioned and the ones that he has laid out have been largely Democratic ones. And he was asked about that actually yesterday in the Oval Office, pressed on whether, he would be willing to send National Guard troops to cities in red states. He said, I would, but he doesn't think that they need it as much as these Democratic cities. But as you mentioned, this order creates, quote, specialized units in the National Guard to quell civil unrest. Again, I think the clearest sign yet that the president is only going to be ramping up these efforts and trying to bring them beyond D.C. rather than rein it in after kind of what he's seen as a test case for this type of operation.
Okay, so this is the assault cycle, and I've sort of modified it for my, to expand it beyond just sexual abuse. And I'll explain this in a moment. But if you think about the Proud Boys, and particularly like the Oath Keepers and these so-called patriotic groups, the Oath Keepers are, they swear some oaths to uphold the Constitution. And these various groups, the Alex Jones people, all these right-wing people that are all about, freedoms and all the things that, people talk about on the right, all the patriotic bullshit stuff. The idea of having martial law and posse comitatus is central to their belief system, like to oppose that. And, the fucked up thing is that they seem to be okay with Trump doing it, which is the worst possible. You don't have a friend, somebody that you think is great that imposes something like this. That a guy who's going to be dead within the next 10 years, and he's not going to be president in the next 4, and you're handing over a martial law situation to the Democrats. But the thing, and they're not opposing it, which is just classic these groups and all these people. Like, it's just they pretend to believe in things until somebody comes along and cons them out of their beliefs, right? So in that, this is the assault cycle. It comes from a book called something Pathways. We always called it Pathways. And I worked with it when I was in my first treatment center, when I was in the unit. I didn't have my master's degree in counseling yet. And that was the model of therapy. This is, anti-sex offender therapy. I don't anti-sex offender, but, teaching kids to get rid of controlling their sexual offensive behavior. And maybe adults, but this is mostly for kids and teenagers as far as I knew. And then when I became a clinician, I went back and got my master's degree. I worked with this workbook, and it was a 5-part workbook. It was like 5 courses, 5 semesters that were about a quarter of the year, or a third of the year. The kids would go through this program, and it took about 2 years to get through. And so, some kids would struggle. They wouldn't, whatever. They they wouldn't accept it the first semester. They would rebel. They would act out, whatever. But usually it took about 2 years. It could be done in 18 months if the kid was really, motivated, which they all should have been. And this was the cycle. The first course was called assault cycle, and this is what this is taken from. And so this is how the assault cycle would work. The kid has some sort of trauma here, some sort of whatever it is that causes them to have the compulsion to sexually abuse other kids, other people. And so this trauma is where they get broken and damaged and screwed up. And when their trauma comes up, it comes up because they have a victim stance, right? Something is done to them where they feel victimized. And this, again, we'll go through it. I'm going to go through it as the sexual assault cycle, but then I'm going to, make this about everything. Like, in terms of, this is the kind of cycle people go through when they are going to do wrong behaviors. And so they have this poor me victim stance, and that's where it starts. They feel sorry for themselves, and they feel bad, and then they have a desire for pleasure to cover up the pain. They, this could be alcoholic or whatever it is, drug addict, but in this case it's sexual abuse. And so they want to, and also they've been victimized and they want to feel powerful, because every abuser is a victim, and every victim is an abuser. Like, they have this, there's an abuser in every victim, and there's a victim in every abuser. And so when their victim comes out, they want to take their power back, and that's here, power and control. They want to be the one in control. They don't want to be the poor victim they were when they were a kid, and they want to feel that power. They want to be in the power position, right? So they have this relationship inside of them of victim and abuser, and to make themselves feel powerful, they want to victimize other people. They want to make them submit to their will. And so then they start fantasizing about it, daydreaming about setting somebody up, and they start feeling sexually aroused, and they start planning they spot a potential victim, and then they start planning the assault. And here's the most important part here. It's grooming, right? And we'll come back to that, and I'll talk about that extensively. That's where they set up the offense. They set up the victim. Then there's the acting out, the abuse. And then they feel guilty, but it's a selfish guilt where they feel like a victim guilt, and they feel like they're going to go to jail. They feel, whatever. And it's like some, not real remorse, not concern for the victim, but they feel sorry for themselves, which kicks them back into the victim stance, and the whole thing starts over. And so the reason I left out the grooming, people who, let's say your boss yells at you or embarrasses you at work, and you feel helpless and powerless, but you have fantasies about killing the guy or punching him or something, acting out violently, right? But it stops there. Like, you get whatever, you have a victim stance where somebody mistreats you, and somebody treats you badly, and then you want to get back at them. I mean, it could be any number of things that you think of. You start thinking of ways to get back at them, which people do, right? Somebody wrongs you, and you want revenge. You want to see them suffer in some way, and you have these fantasies about that person suffering. And for the most part, people who are in control of their behavior, it stops here. They don't start to do anything. Whatever. If you skip these two steps, or whether those steps are in there, something has been done to wrong you, and you want to maybe even quit your job. Like, maybe you just want to say fuck you to your boss and quit. But something stops you. Like, you have some control over your behavior, and so you don't get into the back half of grooming and then acting out. And you don't really maybe even plan something. It's just a few ideas of ways you'd like to get back at the person, right? So most people have, at different times of their lives, either violent or negative, they have bad intentions for other people, to have wronged them or people they don't like. And It could be leaving a hateful comment. I could be, acting out that way, like saying mean things to somebody, which then it goes into these other stages, right? But, you know, most people are able to restrain themselves, especially for the criminal type things like murder and some of these other things, right? Where, they have, like, they feel bad and they're really angry and they feel really hateful towards somebody, but they don't take it to the next level. It doesn't become a grooming or planning thing. But the grooming is really essential to this, right? And we've been groomed for martial law for quite some time. And so what grooming is, is you are conditioning a person or group of people to accept something that they don't want, that's weird, they know is wrong, that feels creepy, and make it normal and make it a part of their life. Like, this is just what we do. And so let's say, like, there is a older brother or something like this, maybe a relative or friend or babysitter or something, who wants to sexually offend a kid. And so what they would do is, it's a series of more ever increasing invasive type of behaviors where they're conditioning you to accept things. Like, it would be, the first step would be to play some video games. The older kid would play video games with the younger kid. And, the video games would be just normal video games. And the younger kid wants attention from the older kid, like some kind of thing, whatever the relationship is. The younger person wants attention from the older person. And so then all of a sudden the older kid brings in inappropriate video games with stuff the younger kid knows they're not supposed to see. Or something like pornography. And the older kid shows the younger kid stuff, and now the older kid can say, I'll tell on you. You've been doing this, and has some power over the younger kid. But also, like, the younger kid has now entered into inappropriate content. And so that's the first step of grooming. And then there's, like, physical touch that starts off maybe as, like, wrestling or something like this, and then gets ever more invasive to where it's like, it becomes a sexual offense, right? So the grooming is to take something that isn't normal behavior, something that isn't wanted, and, to condition the kid, like this idea that I said where the older kid will have some, things that the kid doesn't want their parents to know about as leverage too. Like, this becomes part of it. They get them involved in shady behaviors, seedy behaviors, and that the little kid's like, worried that they're going to get in trouble, and the older kid, and secrecy, like, they make it secret. This is our secret, these things, and what will happen if you tell, like these, Ghislaine Maxwell told these girls that they'd be killed if they told on Jeffrey Epstein. Like, these victims said she threatened them, that kind of thing, and that's always involved, right? That has to be involved in anything that's criminal. There has to be some threat, some whatever consequence to keep the kid from speaking up, right? And so, and the kid's ashamed and doesn't want people to know, and so, all these things are part of that. So, in terms of the grooming for martial law, I saw this years and years ago when I started covering this kind of thing. So, remember, they rolled this out in airports, and you can remember the stuff that happened there in the airports. That first, they made you go through security checkpoints. So, when I was a little kid, there was none of that. Like, you went to, like, an airport, like a bus station, there was no metal detectors. There was pretty much nothing in terms of security, because there was no real threat, and this, the whole thing was contrived. But, flying was great when I was a kid. It was a fun thing. Like, I enjoyed going to the airports. It was like, people there were going places, off on vacation, and going up in the sky and flying an airplane, little kids, as a little kid, all these things. And then they kind of made it suckier and suckier. And so, before the big event in 2001, they had already started to put security in the airports, even though there had been no reason for it. There had been things that were, there wasn't hijacking and there wasn't any of these types of behaviors. But they started to put some security in the airport, right? And then the big event happened and the security tightened up. Like they started to say, all right, we need to do more screening. And so that was in a sense, the first step into this grooming process. I mean, they already had, there's some movies, for example. There's movies where there's hijackers and there's, these types of things that people see. And then it gets the idea out there that, you're not safe on an airplane. They need to make sure people don't bring weapons on and these types of things. So you had these security checkpoints, but they're nothing like the TSA. There's no, it was a limited, airport security stuff. And it wasn't as invasive, right? And so after the big event 2001, they had this guy called the shoe bomber. And the shoe bomber came in and he tried to light a bomb in his sneaker. It didn't work. Weird looking guy, mentally ill, homeless looking guy, right? And then after that, what did they do? They made you take off your shoes. So this was like a new thing. All right, now you had to take off your shoes because there could be a bomb in there, right? Before that, there was liquids. They would make sure the liquid stuff, like they could go search through your backpack and the liquids, and they were scanning your stuff. And they now have these airport scanners that you put all your belongings through, and we walk through a metal detector. And so there was the shoe bomber, and then there was the thing that happened in England in the July. It was maybe July 7th, was it? Might have been my birthday, but it was in July of 2000, and I want to say 16 or 17, 18, I don't know. And they had 24 different people all coming in with stuff that was in their suitcases. And it was liquid explosive. So now they were checking your liquids, and they were, so it's more invasive. Now they're looking through your stuff. First they get you to take off your shoes. Like that's normal. Now you got to take off your shoes. Like, that there's symbolic things with shoes, where they throw shoes up in the big, Wag the Dog movie. There's, they throw these shoes up on the line. There's all these, shoes, like you see these sneakers up on there's an association with shoes and all kinds of these events. There's these candlelight vigils, and you'll see that there'll be shoes there. It's a whole shoe thing. And, there's whatever that means, whatever symbolic means that you're now taking off your shoes. And then now they're searching through your shit. So you bring your luggage in, and they would open up your luggage, and they would look through it. Because these guys that went to England, and it was unsuccessful. Both these things were unsuccessful. Nothing happened. There was no lawsuits. There was no body count. There was just an attempt. But now, internationally, they could go through your suitcase, and that's very invasive. Like you're packing your stuff there, and whatever you have, your underwear, whatever's in there, this people have whatever things that are private to them, hygiene product, whatever things are going. Now they're opening it up and going through your fucking suitcases, right? Like, people you don't know are opening up your private suitcase and combing through it and taking things out and looking through it. And the whole idea is that you are a potential terrorist. Like you're treating you like a criminal, right? Where you're guilty before being found. There's no presumed innocence. You're presumed guilty, and and they might find something in there, and they pull you in the back room, start questioning you, and all these things, right? Like something that you didn't mean to put in there intentionally, whatever it might be. When I was going back and forth from India, they stopped doing it as much. They would only screen certain suitcases, and we brought like kitchen knives and all kinds of tools and shit because we were going to India for an extended period of time. We're going there for years, and when we came back, we flew from England, and they examined the shit out of the bags, and I had this big, kitchen knife, and they just either didn't see it or just passed it through, right? But but there was this element of they're searching through your stuff, and then there was the underwear bomber, and so with the underwear bomber, it was they had this guy who put a bomb in his underwear, which was obviously a complete, like what the fuck, right? Another crazy looking person, and another failed attempt, right? This guy had a fuse sticking out of his shoe, the shoe bobber, and he tried to light the fuse, and a bunch of people jumped on him, and it was, but then all of us suffered because of this one moron, right? This one, this false flaggy type of thing that went on. And so the underwear bomber comes in, and now they're like, all right, you motherfuckers, you potential terrorists, we got to look at your underwear. And so from that, they rolled out these naked body scanning machines where you're getting x-rayed at the airport. And they already had these machines purchased in most of the airports. There were already these machines that they had made. There was a guy who was a part of the Bush administration that was in charge of these things that also had a financial incentive. He was tied to these companies. The guy who the czar they put in charge of this thing, he was being compensated, and these things were already being rolled out. So now they were zapping you and x-raying you, and say they would do these pat downs, and now oftentimes touching your private areas. And so they started with your shoes, and then they rifle through your bags and your stuff, and now they're grabbing your crotch, right? Now they're taking x-ray pictures of you, and every once in a while they grab you randomly out of the line and do an extensive. You put in this little glass cubicle. It happened to me, and they see if there's any gunpowder on your fingers, and they do a swap. They test you, and treating you like a criminal, and they're putting their hands on you. They're rifling through your things and checking your papers, like you see in the Gestapo movies. And this is all grooming, right? It's ever more invasive steps where they make it normal for them to come up and search through your shit and put their hands on you and treat you like you're a piece of shit criminal. And then after that, they started to roll it out at different types of malls and things. And they were going to move forward with it. It sort of got stifled, but it was something, they had the big momentum from 9/11, and they were using this. And, I went to these foreign countries, and right after 9/11, I flew through D.C., and I went to France, and they had, all these Muslim people, and they were having this immigration problem. And they had guys out with machine guns, French soldiers, and it was fucking bad. It was way worse than America. And so you go overseas, there's places they made me take my belt off in, Dubai. And, they were just rolling this out. And what they're doing is, the airport, you're like almost in jail when you go through it. You go through a security checkpoint, and you're now in this enclosed environment. You're just stuck in this, until you leave the airport on the other end of your journey, and, you've gone through this whole process, and it's fucking brutal. It's a very difficult process, very unpleasant, right? And there was just a lot of stress around it. And, me seeing this and grooming and all these things, I'm more conscious of it. And so it's a whole thing. Then the whole TSA stuff, right? But now you're used to having these things done to you. This is part of what the government can do to you, and there was no real reason for it. All these failed things and fake things and whatever had happened. And now they've groomed you into allowing, them to put your hands on you and search you and search your stuff. And it's like, all right, well, it's at airports, but if we let you let us do it at the airport, so now you let us do it at the mall, or you let us do it at the concert. All these types of things, right? And so it becomes something where they're checking your papers on the street now, and they're coming up and frisking you for no reason, and you're just hassling you. And this is a global thing, right? It's not like every country has their own separate policies. It's different in different places, but some of the things are the same. International airports, they all have to have this scrutiny, because you could get on a plane in one place and hijack it there and fly it to another country. So every airport is now under international law, and you're subjected to whatever that they allow them. They say that you have to endure, right? This is all grooming, and so they've been grooming you for martial law for a long time. Like, that's just one example of it, right? And so the martial law stuff is essential for them to give you a new deal that you're not going to like. Some of it is just prepare the new generation. So these kids have been groomed. COVID was grooming, the COVID lockdown, and all the rights they took away from you during COVID. All the things, you couldn't go to work, you couldn't be on the streets, all these things. 6 feet apart, right? All the, You had to wear a mask. These are the things that they can violate these policies. You have to get the vax. You're making it basically mandatory. People being forced to get the vax. All these things that they're making you do. Then all these things that they start. First, you wash your hands. Oh, everyone wash their hands. Oh, that's not enough. You gotta stay 6 feet apart. Oh, now you gotta fucking remember. First, it was like through touch. So someone had COVID, they touched a grapefruit at the store, and you pick it up, and now you had COVID. And so remember, they're cleaning the surfaces. And they're like, no, now it's airborne. It was person to person. And then you had to stay 6 feet apart. It's person to person. And then it's airborne, right? Then you have to wear a mask. And then the masks are worthless. All these things that come out and just to change the story. But that's a form of grooming. And once you work with it, once you see grooming, people groom each other all the time. When we had somebody who was going to, fix something on our farm, our garage door. And the guy came in, and you could tell it's just like a sales thing. And the guy was kind of incompetent, so he put me on the phone with his manager. And I'm like, it was a garage door in a barn that we're not going to spend money on. It's just whatever. And the guy's like, the guy's not even there. And he's like, oh, you got chickens? He starts telling me about his mom's chickens. And I'm like, time is fucking currency to me. Stop with your grooming bullshit and tell me what the fucking price is of the thing, right? And the guy's going on and on. I had to interrupt him. I'm like, fucking just let's move on, right? I'm not here to make friends. I'm not trying to get to know. You're trying to form a relationship, and you've got this script you're reading from, right? The sales script. When I went to India, the sales script is so obvious, and I would try to get them off their talking points. Just because they couldn't. They weren't able to think for themselves and see that a customer was getting pissed off with their bullshit, script, and they couldn't leave the script because the culture is very much like that, and they just they just go through it, but they didn't have any way to adjust, right? But this is the way that you're groomed, where they're setting you up for something. There's way they're trying to sell you things. It's a constant set of new invasive behaviors that are happening. They're taking away something away from you. And so they've been pushing the martial law stuff, and Trump particularly, and we saw it happen with the Chaz and the Chad, that place that the Portland and Seattle and some of these places gave the city over to protesters and liberal bullshit, Antifa and Black Lives Matter stuff. And then, what happened with January 6th, and then it becomes, there's things that they put in place now because of these events, and everybody suffers. And to where you're, now everybody's subjected to these things. And so Trump has made up a bunch of crime statistics that it's not as bad in D.C. as it was. In 2024, the murder rate was down significantly. But he just makes up these statistics, and they're getting you used to it. You see it in D.C., you see the military on the street, and then they roll it out in these other cities. And before you know it, there's martial law. It's steps towards this. They did this with the Boston bomber when they were searching for the second Boston bomber. There was all this militaristic stuff that they were putting military on the streets. And, I've seen military equipment being moved over the years, and, military equipment being sold to towns, cities, police departments buying, at very cheap rate, old military equipment for their assaults, their SWAT teams and their other, their tactical units. And so this is grooming, right? You're being groomed. And I can see grooming all the time. I see the grooming, that, the talking points and, all the ways, when they said the big lie and these things and all the stuff, the way that they put things out there and they have these talking points and selling points. They're moving you towards something, right? They're creating fear. It's the problem, reaction, solution. You have a problem, then you have your reaction, and then they give you a solution, right? Problem, reaction, solution. And what they're doing is taking away your no. You say no to something. If someone said, I want to pat you down and grab your crotch, the answer would be no, right? I want to, search you for weapons because you might be a threat. The answer would be no, fuck you. You're not touching me, right? But somehow they are able to do that at the airport, where they're now putting their hands on you. Your shoes are sitting in a bucket somewhere. Or your wallet and belt and all these things are, you got to take off to go through the metal detectors. Then they zap you with some radiation. You're going to go on a plane, and planes, you get radiated all the time. You get little. You're closer to the sun. There's less protection. And there's this, people who work in flight attendants and pilots are really radiation workers, right? They get exposed to way too much of this stuff. But then they zap you through the naked body scanner, and then maybe they pat you down, all these things. And where there would be a no, hey, I ain't no fucking, you're not touching me. I'm not taking off my fucking shoes. Get your hands out of my fucking suitcase, right? What are you doing? So and there's like a $10,000 fine they slapped on you and all these things where they were going to make you, put you on a no-fly list. They all these threats and things that they're going to do to you. And so where the answer would be no, then they now it's a yes. You're walking down the street. Hey, where are your papers? Well, what are you doing? What did I do? Well, nothing. You're just, everyone's now a terrorist. Everyone's now a criminal. Maybe you're a legal immigrant. Yeah, but look at me. I'm fucking clearly an American. No, I don't know. Everyone, Trump is, so they get you groomed where you accept these behaviors, where they just come in and they just, violate your personal space and all these things, treat you like a criminal even though you haven't done anything. You don't have your Miranda rights. And they're using this fucking dumb fuck Trump, this piece of shit, to roll this stuff out. But they've been planning this for a long time. And they got a guy who the people who are most against this, these so-called fake-ass patriots who are most against this, are cheering Trump on. They did this with the Cubies. Like the Cubies were always supposed to be these right-wing patriots, these dumbass QAnon people. And when they started to cheer on that people like Tom Hanks and other people were being rendered, sent down to Guantanamo Bay, having these American citizens who are having their rights violated. And again, you say, well, I hate those guys. Those guys are pedos. Well, that's what they always tell you, right? That they, even if the guy was, they can, once they do it to them, they can do it to you. Once they roll out martial law in D.C., they can roll it out in Chicago. And so they're rendering these guys, these people, the Cubies were just making it up, didn't happen, bringing them down to Guantanamo Bay and having secret military tribunals and executing them or locking them up without due process. And these so-called patriots were cheering this on, and I'm like, you fucking morons. Do you think that they're not going to do that to you? They're taking your no away. They're taking your Miranda rights away. They're taking your, these things. You're being groomed for this, right? And so the closer that the martial law is, which we see now it's pretty close, the other things that go with that, the things that they need the martial law for, taking away your money, taking away your land, taking away, FEMA camps, all these things. Whatever they're going to roll out, I don't know specifically what it is, that you're going to be upset about. When your lifestyle is taken away because our economy's fucked and our culture's fucked and, they have no choice. I mean, this isn't something that they necessarily want to do. I mean, they always want more power and more control. But they're doing this, mostly because they have to, because the economy is a fucked up debt-based economy. And inevitably, it was going to collapse, and they can't give you your lifestyle. They're going to take away your Social Security. They're going to take away your health care. They're going to take away, your grocery, your ability to drive, and gas prices, and grocery, electricity. And you're not going to have internet and electricity all the time. It's going to be spotty, and the distractions are going to leave you, and you're going to have a shitty lifestyle that you didn't have before. And you've grown up with a certain lifestyle, and you think you're entitled to it, and so you're going to be pissed. But you're going to be yelling at a bunch of fucking military, maybe even foreign military, because American troops were less likely to fire on their own people. And then when you're like, hey, I thought this was just about the liberals. And then, you realize that Trump fucked you, right? And so, yeah. So that's grooming. I just want to go through that. I thought that was kind of an important, whatever it was. And I got these other things to get to here. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Let's start let's start our day with a video, at least for me, my day, with a Don Lemon short video. Westmore says, LOL. Trump claims that Westmore privately told him, "Sir, you're the greatest president of my lifetime." Um, and apparently Westmore is laughing at that. I don't know who Westmore is. Watch Don Lemons hear her. That's the music he plays. Look at his expressions. Oh, 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 ooh, oh, ooh, ah, ah, ooh. Don Lemons has been taking some acting lessons. Look at his expression, moving eyebrows. Open. Look at him. Look at him go. Look at him fucking go. All right. So that's, we should just see this, like all these videos I should do, just like one day, all these expressions he does. I mean, it's horrible. Ah, like you only need one expression. It's a short little tweet. There should only be like one expression, right? he just doesn't understand what these reaction videos are. There should be a surprise, right? It's not a series of surprises. Puzzle, like, like, what is he trying to convey here? Like 18 different emotions here, right? So here's the first. Let's start at the beginning here. Start here at the beginning. So he reads it and he's like, "Oh, I'm intrigued." And then, what? Wait, what's going on here? Like, it's just one statement. Like, it isn't like there's some complex, you're having an existential crisis over this thing, right? Oh, whoa, hey, I'm surprised. What's happening? Boom, that's 3 different emotions. Oh, I'm even more surprised. Oh, now that I thought about it, it's even more surprising. Oh, I'm really surprised. I'm almost a little bit bashful. Woo. And I'm happy. Ah, right? Yeah, now I get it. And then there's the last one. These 7 different reactions in one little thing that's not even... Why even post that, right? You know what? Because he got caught lying about bragging about something that didn't happen. Let's fucking... Trump does that like every fucking 10 seconds. Trump's constantly doing that. Anyways. And so then there's this.
Committee issued a subpoena to the estate of convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein for documents in its possession that could be helpful to its investigation. Among the specific documents the committee is requesting include, quote, all entries contained within the reported leather-bound book compiled by Ms. Ghislaine Maxwell for Mr. Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday. This is the birthday book that, according to the Wall Street Journal, includes a body letter from Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein with a drawing of a naked woman and a message that concludes, "Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret."
So, I don't know if they're going to release the letter. I mean, the Congress is still dominated by Trump. I'm not sure what's going on here, but it'll get leaked if it's in there. So there's one of 2 things happening here. The Wall Street Journal, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch, which owns Fox News and New York Post, which is now backing Trump. Like for a brief period of time, he bailed on Trump when Trump went to prison or was convicted of a felony, which didn't count because he ended up. If you're convicted of a felony, you can't become president. But there's all that. But the New York Post, Rupert Murdoch, Wall Street Journal, is pro-Trump and pro-Republican. And so either they made this story up just to give him cover. So when the book came out, it would show that he didn't do this and it would exonerate him even more, which won't even count at this point because, I mean, everybody who's not a Trumper knows that he's covering up this thing. Anybody with, pulse and, I mean, most people don't give a shit, right? They just don't care. It doesn't register. But if his letter is in this book, it's going to be condemning because it shows a level of depravity. Like, he drew a naked woman and put Trump in the pubic hair. Like his, like, you don't do that to somebody that you're not having, some level of intimate conversations about sexuality, right? Like he talked about Jeffrey's Epstein love for young women, and that there's, then all of a sudden they're trying to say he's just an acquaintance. a social friend, like somebody that you might see at a party, like superficially. That's what they're trying to push here with that stupid Ghislaine Maxwell, whatever it is. And so I don't know when the time frame is, but if the letter's in there and it is what they say it is, it's just as big a smoking gun as you're going to get from this thing, because it means that that this is, a very sexual, kind of exchange from Trump to Epstein.
Donald Trump has denied that such a letter exists, but now Congress will get to see exactly what is in that birthday book after Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna vowed to pursue that subpoena on this program last month.
It is a revelation to me that he said that that birthday book is with private lawyers in the Epstein estate. We subpoenaed the Epstein files, but that's a hard thing to do, to get the Department of Justice to cooperate in releasing those files. What's not hard to do is to subpoena private attorneys in a private estate and to get compliance. So I'm actually going to invite Bradley Edwards to meet with the House Oversight Committee, and I think we can easily move forward on this subpoena of that birthday book, and which could really advance.
They got the birthday book. They're going to get that fucking birthday book.
This case.
Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia of California. He's the top-ranking Democrat on the House Oversight Committee. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you for being with us. No matter what you think about the whole Epstein thing, the compounding of what appear to be lies is becoming quite interesting. We got the audio and the transcripts of the very strange conversation that was had by the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, who is Donald Trump's lawyer, and Ghislaine Maxwell. And this issue of this birthday book.
Oh, one of the things I meant to say in my last video is, this thing where she says friendship, or whatever you want to call it. The word friend, and about half of them are girlfriends, is said like 182 times. It's like even more than Clinton and Trump's name. She uses the word friend quite a bit, or he does, the interviewer. The Ghislaine, it's a weird thing. That friend was. They really wanted to get the word friend out there, like you're hearing it over and over again, for whatever reason. And then she's like friend or whatever relationship, a social friend. They were, trying to make, there was no victim stuff going on. There was no, trying to do what's right for the victims with this pedophile. It was clearly to make this thing like a nothing burger. Like, when Pam Bondi said, oh, there's nothing to see here. There's no list. There's no... there's nothing here. He committed suicide. There's nothing. All your conspiracies are false. The Todd Blanchett interview with Ghislaine Maxwell is to confirm that, which is, of course, anybody with half a brain knew that she'd figure that out, and this is the way they wanted to go, because she knows that Trump's name is all over that thing. And, just all of these things.
Came up. Can I just play for you a little about what they said about the birthday book and get your take on the other side?
Do you remember asking President Trump to submit a letter for that?
I do not.
And do you remember, would you have been the one to do that, or would somebody else have done that?
I did ask some people. I don't remember Mr. Trump. I don't remember who I did ask, but Epstein also asked people himself directly.
Okay.
So it could have happened that way, if it happened at all.
If it happened at all. Because I'm not confirming it happened. She compiled the book and would have known who was in it, right? These are famous people. The fact she says, I don't remember, I don't remember because, this could be like, it comes back up that they find the letter. It can't be, no way I saw that letter was in there. And he's not asking her. He asked her. Let's go back to this thing. Go back a little bit further. Do you remember asking President Trump to submit a letter for that? You don't ask, do you remember, right? Oh, I could say I didn't remember? Sure, I didn't remember. If you're being asked these questions. If he asked, if this was a prosecuting attorney. So Donald Trump put a letter in this book. Did you request it? What's your relationship with the letter that Donald Trump put in this book? like saying like a fact that exists, right? Not, do you remember if such a thing ever happened, right? So,
I don't remember Mr. Trump, I don't remember who I did ask, but Epstein also asked people himself directly.
Okay.
So it could have happened that way, if it happened at all.
Unsatisfying, to say the least. Your take on that?
I mean, first, both Donald Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell are enormous liars, clearly. And this just continues, this massive cover-up. First of all, let's be clear. Ghislaine Maxwell is a convicted sex trafficker, an abuser of young women and girls, is a known liar, has been convicted of incredible violence and serious crimes.
So nobody's watching this. This is Lawrence O'Donnell's shitty show when he's out for vacation. This guy, Smear Kanish, is here. I mean, whatever audience they have, it's just Democrats and, I don't know what the Republicans and the Trumpers are seeing. Fox News isn't covering this, like I showed you what Fox News said yesterday, where this totally exonerates Trump. And I don't know how it's being covered in the Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson land, those people. But I mean, it isn't good. Like, it just, so they're sloppy handling of this, right? And, what I said a long time ago about this, when I saw the thing where Trump said he likes young girls, I mean, he was quoted in this article that was about Bill Clinton. The article was about Jeffrey Epstein, mystery money man, right? And that they showed his airplane going to Haiti, but it was the Epstein, the Lolita Express. And they got 5 famous people. It was like Kevin Spacey, Clinton, and Trump, and a couple others I can't remember, that were on the cover, like that were, were known as associates and friends of his, that were, vouching for him, talking about what a great guy they are. They were buds. And so, the guy clearly knew him. And they were, friends for 20 years. And Trump clearly knew about the girl thing. It's something they shared, young girls. Trump was into young girls. That's why he bought the beauty pageant. And so this is, I mean, there's no reason to think anything else, right? Like, this is what happened. This is what is the truth.
Joining us now is Sarah Matthews, former Trump White House Deputy Press Secretary and spokesperson for Home of the Brave, and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. We've discussed this many times. I am not a lawyer, but when I heard...
I just play one on TV.
What Todd Blanche said, non-consensual, when she seemed to be struggling for a word, I never saw anything that was. What do you make of that in terms of the number 2 person at the DOJ doing an interview with a convicted criminal?
Chris, if that question is to me,
yes.
There are multiple instances in this interview in which Todd Blanche attempts to fill in the gaps for Ghislaine Maxwell. There are also moments where her own...
Yeah, that happened a lot. Fill in the gaps, meaning, he's leading the witness. And she's not stupid. Like, she's an educated, sophisticated handler that works for Mossad and comes from money and hobnobs with the royal family and rich people. She's a socialite, right? And she's, in jail and knows what Trump's done. She knows what Trump wants from this thing, which is to minimize his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and minimize the whole thing. Like Trump statements, which I'm sure she's heard, that he doesn't want innocent victims, not victims of abuse, but friends of Jeffrey Epstein who didn't have anything to do with his thing, to get smeared by this. He said it over and over again. He doesn't give a shit about any of the other things. And he's saying it's a hoax perpetrated by the left wing to get him. And it's always been Trumpers that have moved this needle forward. The Democrats have never cared about Epstein until Trump incriminated the shit out of himself, right? And so this guy came in there, and there was, they no longer give a shit about smart people. Like Trump no longer, and the Trump administration cares about anybody with half a brain. Like they have long since, given up on smart people. They want WWE watching dumb fucks to believe in his lies, and that's all he's got left. It's going to be 20 to 30% of the population, but enough of the if they're passionate enough that the Republicans who now are in charge of the government for these next 2 years will bow to Trump and allow him to push through his agenda, right?
Attorneys attempt to fill in those gaps and sort of direct the questioning. That's not that unusual where you have an attorney, where you have a proffer session with somebody that you're thinking about entering into a cooperation agreement with, for example. What makes this so unusual is not only that Todd Blanche is President Trump's former criminal defense lawyer, but that Ghislaine Maxwell herself has long ago been convicted and is on a last-ditch appeal to the Supreme Court, and barring that, is sort of auditioning for a pardon. That's what makes this so unusual. And in particular, she struggles with the word inappropriate at various times in the interview as well, because she says herself, her definition of inappropriate might be different than somebody else's definition of inappropriate. And where it comes to Jeffrey Epstein's behavior with women over the age of 18, she specifically draws a line and says she's not going to get into that, almost as if to say anything with anyone over 18 is outside of bounds. And the only thing she thinks could possibly be illegal here is conduct with those who are underage. That's not the way law sees it. You can sex traffic somebody who is over the age of 18. We saw that, for example, very recently in the P. Diddy trial. So Ghislaine Maxwell's own understanding of the law is at best immature, and she's not really challenged on it during the course of the interview.
Of course she's not. So attorney representing 20 Maxwell victims say clients weren't notified in advance of Maxwell transcript released, which is the title of this video. I don't know why they haven't said it yet.
Sarah, the Washington Post notes that the release of the Maxwell interview, and I'm quoting them, offered no evidence to support conspiracy theories long fanned by Trump and his allies that the federal government had covered up a vast sex trafficking ring to protect powerful public figures. And yet there are some far-right influencers who appear to be pleased with this. They called it, at least one called it a good first step. Another argued the leftist narrative is in shambles. Do you think that this will help the story that Trump has wanted to go away?
If Trump was an Epstein client, the deep state would have already leaked it. He's clean.
Go away with his base.
Well, it's interesting that way back when, a couple months ago, Pam Bondi herself said that she had the Epstein list on her desk. And
all right, so I thought the lawyer for the way they titled this video would seem that the lawyer for 20 of these victims would have been interviewed. Of course, they don't care about the victims. That's obvious. The victims are no longer a part of this thing. Virginia Giuffre, the little bit of the testimony I saw seemed very sincere and legitimate. And she was Epstein. She was suicided. And she was one of the big players of this because she was, obviously the lawsuit was Prince Andrew, but she got recruited at Mar-a-Lago. This is 100% owned by Trump now. This is like everything about Epstein has moved away from all the other people on the list, and it's become a Trump thing. And if that letter that he wrote to Epstein comes public, I don't know, there's just nothing that's going to ever happen until the system collapses. Oh, I have to do that introduction. I forgot to do it. I'll go and the introduction you've already seen, which is the grooming thing. So let me finish this one up here, and I'll go do that. Okay, so this video is a little bit disjointed because I went back and I did the grooming thing that you saw, martial law. Very important. I think it's educational. It's whatever way that knowing things helps. You have the knowledge, but does the knowledge help, right? Like that's the age-old question here in terms of nothing's going to change. You're not going to stop anything. There's no resistance. It's them pushing the limits of what they can get away with. And grooming is a big part of it. And figuring out what the American people will tolerate. Of course, the younger generation will tolerate more. They're already building those 15-minute cities for them. because all they need is a small little room with their internet stuff, and they don't need these other things. And so, all these things they're moving towards a change in lifestyle, getting rid of land ownership. Remember, you're gonna own nothing and like it. That was what the World Economic Forum said. You weren't going to own anything. You were going to rent everything, and you were going to like it. So what's going to happen between now and then? So these are the things that have been out there for a number of years. Things have gotten back down. I mean, they had an agenda, and it doesn't always work out their way. They don't say the term New World Order anymore, these things. But there's a change that's got to come, and, whatever the catalyst is, World War III, nuclear war, whatever issues there are, collapse of civilization, natural disasters, and, air quotes, whatever it might be, things that are happening, taking advantage of those things that are natural or man-made weather events, and, all the things that they need to somehow get you to accept a new deal, and depopulation's a part of it. A massive amount of die-off, something where it's not normal anymore. The things that are happening are beyond your experience, and you're kind of in a state of shock. And then they come and tell you what they need you to do and what you need to do to be safe. Problem, reaction, solution, and then they impose all these restrictions. And so, it's going to happen. Like, it's just a matter of when. It's not an if thing, it's a when thing. It always happens, and it certainly has to happen for our civilization. So, this video got a little disjointed because like I said, I was going to do that important introduction. So a few more things I was going to cover. One more thing was Gavin Newsom doing more trolling to Trump, which I'll cover tomorrow. And then I saw a video just came out of Don Lemons questioning whether Trump is dying or not with this whole thing that's going around the internet. Trump, the other piece of this was the John Bolton and now Chris Christie thing, where Trump is targeting individuals and then martial law and doing things that are, people are like, oh, this is wrong and it's illegal, and they can't fight it back. They don't do anything to then talk about it, right? We've entered the time where people should be realizing that all this bullshit that you hear, whether it be in the truth community or left-wing bullshit or right-wing bullshit, all the complaints, all this stuff that's happening, all the things people are saying about all of this stuff, it means absolutely fucking nothing. There's no, it means nothing. Like it just doesn't, it doesn't do anything. There's no changes. There's nothing that's happening to adjust, the whole thing. It's just, it's just something that is going to happen, right? It's something that's, you can complain about it, but you can't stop it. And, that's why the truth community is a failure, because the whole InfoWars thing is a failure. The idea that if you woke everybody up that you could change things, and you can't. And so that should be obvious now to everybody, that Trump is just bulldozing your constitutional rights and, all these things that he's doing. And the Democrats can't do shit about it. And when they come around and, they reverse some of these things or whatever, it's already been done. It shows you it can be done by somebody else, right? It's like, yeah, the thing about abuse is people have been abused. It's like they're puppet strings put inside of them by their abuser. And so when they meet somebody else that's similar, has a similar abusive tendencies, the person just picks up those puppet strings. Like if you're a person who has been manipulated a lot before and you don't know how or why, and you're kind of in a state of shock and denial, and you have these puppet strings inside of you, and anybody can come grab those puppet strings, and you feel helpless and you can't do anything about it, and you're constantly in these kind of relationships because abusers can just smell it on you, and they figure out ways to manipulate your weaknesses and control your behavior. And so, like, you have to, fix those issues. But once Trump has shown how this can be done, then whatever happens with the next 4 years with whoever's president, I mean, we're looking at President Newsom right now. Like, he's the front runner, that greasy motherfucker, right? And then, whoever's after that or whatever it is, like, they know that they can get away with this, and they always want more power and more control. That's just what goes along with these things, right? People who want power want more of it, and with power they want control over everything. They want to force their will on the people, And, people do this individually. There's people who are like this individually, manipulative people. And they are, and then when they get into positions of power in the government, these tendencies get supported, and they just want more and more of these things. And that's what's being, pushed for now. And they need to do it too, because they can't provide you your lifestyle anymore. Your lifestyle's out of stock. And so this is all the things that have to happen. So anyways, let me wrap this one up here. But, I think it's a really important video in terms of knowledge. I can see grooming everywhere because I worked with it. Like when you do something for a living and you understand it, things that I do have done here, like I just see things that other people don't see because I'm doing it every day. When you do your job, you just, you wake up and you do things every day, whatever it is, it changes you, and you see things, on terms of an expertise level that other people won't see because it's your job, right? And I did this for work, and I've seen it my whole life, the grooming, like when someone's trying to groom me. Like, just tell me what the deal is. Like, I'm either going to take it or not, right? Like, you don't have to fucking, you know how they try to manipulate you. Like, you have a price point of what you're willing to pay for something. And then they try to move you off that point by, all this grooming type of stuff to get you to, if you come in with a set, all right, this is how much I'm going to spend on something. And they're trying to talk you into spending more, right? And, you have an idea how so much something will cost. And then you're like, well, I'm not going to spend any more than that. But then they have a way to try to move you off of that number, right? Or whatever. It doesn't have to be, economic, but whatever it is, right? So, like if you go into a date saying that you're not going to, engage in any physical contact, and the person's grooming you, trying to get that to happen, right? Like it's your first date, and you have your standards or whatever, and the person's trying to move you off of that. When people are trying to manipulate you away from something that you don't want to do, or into something you don't want, make you do something you don't want to do, or encourage you, manipulate you into making the choices that you don't really want to make, right? And it's a constant behavior. People are doing it all the time, and now, there's systemic grooming, and, this is what we see now. Anyways, let me wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day, and be grateful.